Hey, you're joining an interview here from the Hoover Institute with a man by the name of John Yo. We'll call him John Yo-Yo. And incidentally, the man that you're looking at, he reminds me of Jay Leno, and I wouldn't be surprised if this actually is Jay Leno. But anyhow, in this interview, he's going to talk about economic freedom, the right that businesses have, supposedly, as not being in existence. So let's listen to what they have to say about economic freedom for businesses.
Talk about lockdown policies. We already have a lot of questions about this, and I have a lot I want to ask you about. Bruce asked the following question. Our county sheriff has declared that our state's stay-at-home restrictions are unconstitutional. He will not have his deputies enforce them. Is he justified, or do state police powers make him wrong?
Bruce, unfortunately, I think they're not unconstitutional in general approach. The state under the police power does have the right to shut down businesses for public health and safety reasons. Until the 1930s, you might have had a constitutional right to keep your business open, to make a living, to economic liberty. But that right was lost in the 1930s under the pressures of the New Deal and FDR's effort to pack the Supreme Court, which had struck down the early versions of the New Deal. And since then, the courts have not recognized this kind of right to economic liberty. On the other hand, you do have some rights that are guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, and those are the ones that are going to have the most success challenging the lockdown restrictions. So, for example, I read a lot about protesters, political protesters in places like California and Michigan. I think a state doesn't have the right to just say no protests. Under our law, I think if...
Okay, let's stay with the subject at hand, economic freedom. And he said, prior to the 1930s, you might have had a right to have your business have economic freedom. In other words, your business could remain open in the midst of this nonsense. But that right was lost in the 1930s under FDR and the New Deal. Well, you need to know the truth. In the 1930s, that is when fascism arrived in America, and that corporations went to bed with government. And incidentally, all forms of anything that you ever thought was genuine government were abolished on the third of the third month of 33. In other words, March the 9th, 1933. So any business that wanted to declare it had a right to be open basically lost it because fascism had arrived, meaning government and corporations ruled together. And that only when the government, with the support of and the backing of the corporations, says so, or vice versa. Whenever the corporations, with the backing of the government, says so. In other words, you really don't know who's in charge. Sometimes you'll say, oh, it's the phony government, the actors. And other times you'll say, oh my gosh, it seems like the corporations are in charge. Well, that's basically true because they're woven together. And they make one iron rule that governs. And if you don't believe that, I'm sorry. You're missing a lot. All you have to do is look at the signs. And I can do a video on symbols and signs that will tell you the truth of exactly what I'm trying to say. So this gentleman, John Yo-Yo, is trying to say, oh, businesses just kind of lost that right under the New Deal. Well, not exactly. They didn't lose it. It just was completely taken over by large corporations fusing themselves with government. Therefore, any small business that wants to open must face the wrath of a phony government and large corporations. So if you go back to one of my other videos, I tried to explain about what's called the Chicago School of Economics, and basically the real virus that's out in existence is the death of an economy, not the death of human beings with body, soul, and spirit. That's all nonsense, complete nonsense. The death of an economy, so that what will thrive, what will survive out of this pandemic will be large corporations who will then swallow up the smaller businesses that fail. That's exactly the thought, philosophy, and methodology of the Chicago School of Economics. And it was done in smaller countries around the world. Sort of a shock and awe, and then clean up the mess by how you want to clean it up, which is buy up small businesses, or worse yet, give them a loan. Then they are indebted for the rest of their existence. And I've heard a lot of commercials. Oh, don't be afraid, little business, because you can get a loan. Well, gee, isn't that wonderful for a little business to get a loan and put it in debt for many, many years? So don't be fooled by all of this. It's just a lot of hokey-pokey nonsense. They're not really telling you the absolute truth, that ultimately businesses did have economic freedom, but due to the collapse of everything long time ago, that is highly questionable because of the corporatocracy, the rule by corporations through phony government. Well, go by the one who cares about even the smallest and tiniest animal, bird, the sparrow. The wonderful gospel song, "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." Let that love surround you, even though you see this terrible, evil force at work, destroying lives, destroying small businesses, destroying folks that are in the poor class or middle class. Please know that God's love is still here in the midst of all this. Go to the one who is the way, the truth, and the life, the Lord Jesus. Thank you for watching. End of video.